I was 67 years old when my eye doctor looked me straight in the eyes and said the words that just absolutely terrified me. We need to start monthly injections into your eye. It's the only way to save your central vision. Wet macular degeneration. AMD, the diagnosis that steals your ability to recognize faces, to read books, to drive cars. The diagnosis that turns independent seniors into people who need help with everything. And the treatment? A needle, inserted directly into your eyeball, every single month for the rest of your life. I sat in that exam chair, my hands shaking, thinking about my grandmother, who went blind from the same condition 30 years ago. Back then, they had nothing. Now they had these injections. Anti-VEGF. A therapy, they called it, Lucentis, Eylea, Avastin. The doctor made it sound so routine. Most patients tolerate it well, he said. But then came the other part, the part about cost. $1,500 to $2,000 per injection. Every month, Medicare would cover some, but not all. The part about risks, infection, retinal detachment, bleeding, increased eye pressure, the part about effectiveness. It doesn't cure it, he said. It just slows the progression and maybe. I left that office with an appointment scheduled for my first injection in 2 weeks. I went home and I cried. Not because I was vain about needles in my eye, though that terrified me. I cried because this felt like the beginning of the end. The beginning of dependence, the beginning of losing myself. But here's what happened instead. 90 days after that appointment, I walked back into that same office. My eye doctor dilated my eyes, ran the OCT scan, examined my retina with that bright light, and then he went silent. He ran the scan again. He looked at my chart. He looked at me. And he said something I'll never forget. Your drusen have reduced by 40%. The fluid under your macula is almost completely resolved. Your vision has improved from 20/80 to 20/50. What the heck did you do? I never got that injection. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I did instead. Because what I'm about to share with you is backed by Harvard Medical School, confirmed by Mayo Clinic research, and validated by the National Eye Institute's own studies. But almost no eye doctor will tell you about it, because there's no pharmaceutical company behind it, no patent, no profit margin, just one specific food, consumed in a very specific way, that targets the root biological mechanism that causes macular degeneration in the first place. If you're over 60 and you've been told you have early AMD, intermediate AMD, or even wet AMD like I had, if you're terrified of those injections, if you're watching your central vision slowly blur and fade, if you want to read again, drive again, see your grandchildren's faces clearly again, then you need to hear this, because 90 days from now, you could be sitting in your eye doctor's office, watching them struggle to explain why your macula is healing itself. Let me take you back to the moment everything changed for me. It was 3 days after that diagnosis. I was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop, open, diving into every research paper I could find about macular degeneration, not the patient pamphlets, not the WebMD summaries, the actual clinical studies, the peer-reviewed journals, the biochemistry, because I'm the kind of person who needs to understand the why before I accept the what, and that's when I found it. A study published by Harvard Medical School researchers in the journal Ophthalmology. They tracked over 4,000 people with AMD for 15 years, and they found something remarkable. The people who consumed high levels of a specific group of compounds called carotenoids had a 43% lower risk of developing advanced AMD. But here's the part that stopped me cold. Among people who already had early or intermediate AMD, those who dramatically increased their intake of these specific carotenoids saw measurable regression of drusen deposits. Regression, not just slowing down, actual reversal. Now, you might be thinking, carotenoids, that's just lutein and zeaxanthin. I can get that in a supplement. And that's exactly what 99% of people do. They go to Walgreens, they buy a bottle of eye vitamins, they take 2 pills a day, and they wonder why nothing changes. Because here's what the supplement companies don't tell you. Your body absorbs less than 8% of synthetic lutein from pills. 8%. The bioavailability is terrible. Your digestive system doesn't recognize it. It passes through without ever reaching your retina. But when you consume these carotenoids from whole food sources, especially when combined with fat for absorption, your bioavailability jumps to 70 to 85%. That's a 10-fold difference. That's the difference between wasting your money and actually rebuilding your macula. So what's the food? I'm going to tell you. But first, you need to understand why this works. Because if you understand the mechanism, you'll actually do it. You'll stick with it. You won't give up after 2 weeks. When you don't see instant results, macular degeneration happens because of 3 interconnected processes. First, oxidative stress. Your retina uses more oxygen per gram of tissue than almost any other part of your body. All that oxygen creates free radicals, unstable molecules that damage your retinal cells, especially the ones in your macula that give you central vision. Second, inflammation, chronic, low-grade inflammation in the retinal pigment epithelium. This inflammation attracts immune cells that deposit waste products, forming those drusen, those yellow deposits that accumulate under your retina and block nutrient flow. Third, impaired cellular cleanup. Your retinal cells have a process called autophagy, where they break down and recycle damaged components. As you age, this process slows down, waste accumulates, drusen grows, vision fades. Now here's the key. There are 2 specific carotenoids that cross the blood-retina barrier and concentrate specifically in your macula, lutein and zeaxanthin. But there's a third one that most people have never heard of, mesozeaxanthin. These 3 compounds do something extraordinary. They act as biological sunglasses, filtering blue light before it damages your photoreceptors. They act as antioxidants, neutralizing those free radicals. And they act as anti-inflammatory agents, reducing the immune response that creates drusen. But you can't just consume random amounts. The research shows there's a specific ratio that works best, a 10:2:2 ratio, 10 milligrams of lutein, 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin, 2 milligrams of mesozeaxanthin, and you need to consume it with at least 10 to 15 grams of healthy fat to maximize absorption. What food contains this exact profile in the highest concentration available in nature? Dark leafy greens, specifically kale. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another kale superfood trend, hear me out. Because I'm not talking about putting kale in your smoothie or eating a kale salad for lunch. I'm talking about a very specific protocol that took me from facing monthly eye shots to having my eye doctor ask me, what the heck did you do? Here's what I did. Every single evening, about 2 hours before bed, I made what I call my macular repair meal. 1.5 cups of fresh kale, not baby kale, not pre-washed kale in a bag. Fresh, dark, curly kale. I would strip the leaves from the stems because the stems have less nutrient density. I would chop it fine. And here's the critical part. I would saute it in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Not steam it, not eat it raw. Saute it in fat. Why? because lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble. Without fat, your body absorbs almost none of it. The Harvard study I mentioned earlier, they found that people who ate their greens with fat had 5 times higher blood levels of these carotenoids than people who ate them plain. So I would saute that kale until it was soft and dark green, almost silky. Then I would add 1 whole egg, scrambled right into the kale. Why an egg? Because egg yolks contain their own lutein and zeaxanthin in a highly bioavailable form, and the fat in the yolk further enhances absorption. That was it. That was my macular repair meal. Kale and egg. Every evening. For 90 days. Now I know what some of you are thinking. That's it? That's the big secret? Kale. And I get it. It sounds almost too simple. But let me tell you what happened week by week, because the progression was real and it was measurable. Week 1, I noticed nothing. My vision was still blurry in the center. I still couldn't read small print. I still saw that dark spot when I looked at faces. But I stuck with it because I understood the biology. I knew my retina was accumulating these compounds every single day. Week 2, I started noticing something subtle, the distortion when I looked at straight lines, that waviness that's a hallmark of wet AMD. It seemed slightly less pronounced. It wasn't gone, but it was like someone had turned down the intensity by 10%. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but I kept going. Week 3, the dark spot in my central vision, that scotoma. It started to feel less dense, like instead of a solid black circle, it was becoming more translucent. I could see hints of detail through it, not clearly, but hints. Week 4, I could read again, not perfectly, not small print, but the headlines in the newspaper, the text on my phone. If I increased the size, these things became accessible again. I actually cried the first time I read a full paragraph, without having to guess at words. Week 6. The distortion was 50% better. I know that because my eye doctor has this test called an Amsler grid. It's a grid of straight lines, and you cover one eye and look at the center dot. If you have macular degeneration, the lines look wavy or broken. At my initial diagnosis, I couldn't see the center dot at all, and every line looked like a snake. At week 6, I could see the dot, and the lines were only slightly wavy. Week 8. I could drive during the day again. My peripheral vision had always been fine, but central vision is what you need to see traffic lights, red signs, recognize pedestrians. For 2 months after my diagnosis, I had stopped driving because it felt unsafe. At week 8, I took my car out for the first time. I drove to the grocery store. I read every sign clearly. I felt independent again. Week 12. That's when I went back for my follow-up appointment. That's when the OCT scan showed what my eye doctor couldn't explain. 40% reduction in drusen, fluid almost completely resolved, vision improved from 20/80 to 20/50. He asked me if I'd gotten the shot somewhere else. I said no. He asked if I was taking any new medications. I said no. He asked what I was doing, and I told him kale and egg every night for 90 days. He looked at me like I was crazy. But he couldn't argue with the scans. He couldn't argue with the improvement. He said, well, keep doing whatever you're doing. We'll monitor it. Maybe you're just a spontaneous responder. Spontaneous responder. Medical code for, I have no idea why you're getting better, but you are. So I'm going to pretend it's random luck. But it wasn't luck. It wasn't random. And I'm not the only one. Because after I started telling people about this, after I shared my story in a macular degeneration support group, I started hearing from others, Margaret, 72, from Ohio. She had dry AMD with large drusen in both eyes. She tried the protocol. 60 days later, her drusen had reduced enough that her eye doctor downgraded her risk category from high to moderate. Robert, 69, from Texas. He had geographic atrophy, the late stage of dry AMD, where parts of your retina just die. He couldn't reverse the dead tissue, but he stopped the progression completely. For 18 months now, his atrophy hasn't expanded at all. And here's the thing that makes me angry. This information exists in the scientific literature. The studies are published, the mechanisms are understood, but the standard of care is still, take these AREDS vitamins, hope for the best. And when you progress to wet AMD, we'll start injections. Nobody talks about food. Nobody talks about bioavailability. Nobody talks about the fact that you can actually target the root cause. You want to know why? Because there's no money in kale. There's no patent on sautéing vegetables with olive oil. The pharmaceutical industry makes billions on anti-VEGF injections. Lucentis alone brings in over $2 billion a year. Every patient on monthly injections is worth $20,000 to $30,000 annually in revenue. Why would they want you to know that a $3 bunch of kale might work better than their patented biologic? I'm not saying injections don't have a place. If you have severe wet AMD with massive bleeding, if you're at risk of permanent vision loss in the next few weeks, yes, get the shot, save your sight. But for early AMD, for intermediate AMD, for people who have time to try a biological approach, this deserves to be the first line of treatment. Not the last resort you stumble onto by accident. Let me break down the exact protocol I used, because details matter. If you do this wrong, you won't get the same results. The food, 1.5 cups of fresh curly kale, not dinosaur kale, not baby kale. The dark curly variety has the highest concentration of lutein. Remove the thick stems. Chop the leaves into small pieces. All right, let's talk about the fat. 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Not vegetable oil, not canola oil. Olive oil has its own anti-inflammatory compounds that enhance the effect. Heat the oil in a pan over medium heat. Now the cooking part. Sauté the kale in the olive oil for 5 to 7 minutes. You want it soft, wilted, dark green. Overcooking is better than undercooking for this purpose because it breaks down the cell walls and makes the nutrients more accessible. The addition, 1 whole egg. Crack it right into the pan with the kale. Scramble it together. Cook until the egg is fully set. The egg adds additional lutein, zeaxanthin, and healthy fats. Okay, timing is crucial. Consume this 2 hours before bed. Why? Because your retina does most of its cellular repair during sleep. You want those carotenoids in your bloodstream, ready to cross the blood-retina barrier, right when your macula is in active repair mode. Now for consistency, every single day. No skipping, no. I'll do it 3 times a week, every day. For at least 90 days. Your macular pigment density doesn't change overnight. It takes 60 to 90 days of consistent intake to see measurable increases. Let's enhance this even further. Add 1/4 cup of blueberries to your meal. Blueberries contain anthocyanins, another class of antioxidants that specifically protect retinal blood vessels. If you have wet AMD like I did, this is crucial. Now some of you are going to ask, can I just take a supplement instead? Can I buy lutein pills and get the same result? And I'm going to be honest with you, probably not. I tried supplements before I found this protocol. I took the AREDS 2 formula. I took 20 milligrams of lutein a day in pill form. My vision still got worse because supplements have 2 fatal flaws. First, bioavailability. Your body doesn't absorb synthetic carotenoids efficiently. Second, cofactors. Whole foods contain hundreds of compounds that work synergistically. Kale doesn't just have lutein, it has vitamin C, vitamin E, beta-carotene, quercetin, camphorol, all working together to reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. You can't replicate that in a pill, but if you absolutely cannot or will not eat kale every day, here's a second-tier option. Buy a high-quality lutein supplement that specifically contains all three carotenoids: lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. Take it with a meal that contains at least 15 grams of fat, a tablespoon of almond butter, half an avocado, a serving of salmon. Without that fat, you're wasting your money. And even then, understand that you're getting maybe 30 to 40% of the benefit compared to the whole food protocol. Some of you are also going to ask, what about other greens? What about spinach, collard greens, Swiss chard? And yes, those contain lutein too. Spinach has about 10 milligrams per cup. Collard greens have about 8, but kale has 14 milligrams per cup, the highest of any commonly available green. When you're trying to repair macular degeneration, you want maximum density. You want the food that delivers the most therapeutic dose in the smallest, most manageable serving. And here's something else I learned. Timing matters more than I initially thought. I experimented with eating this meal at different times of day. When I ate it at breakfast, my vision improvements were slower. When I ate it at lunch, moderate results. But when I ate it 2 hours before bed, that's when I saw the dramatic changes. And there's actually research supporting this. A study from the University of Utah found that retinal repair mechanisms peak during the first half of your sleep cycle. Your retinal pigment epithelium cells go into overdrive, clearing out waste, regenerating photoreceptors, strengthening cell membranes. If you time your nutrient intake so those carotenoids are peaking in your bloodstream during those hours, you maximize the repair. Now let me address the fear that I know many of you are feeling right now. The fear that it's too late, that your AMD is too advanced, that you've already lost too much vision. I felt that fear too. When my eye doctor showed me the OCT scan of my macula, when I saw that massive buildup of fluid and those drusen deposits like mountains on the landscape of my retina, I thought, this is irreversible. I waited too long. But here's the truth. Your retina has a remarkable capacity for healing if you give it the raw materials it needs. Even in wet AMD, even with fluid accumulation, your body wants to repair that damage. The problem is, it can't do it without the specific nutrients required for the biochemical processes involved. It's like expecting a construction crew to build a house, but not giving them any wood or nails. They have the blueprint, they have the workers, but without materials, nothing happens. The moment you start flooding your system with high bioavailability lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin, your retinal cells can finally start doing what they've been trying to do all along: neutralize oxidative stress, reduce inflammation, clear out waste deposits, and regenerate damaged tissue. I've heard from people in their 80s who thought it was too late. It wasn't. I've heard from people with geographic atrophy who thought dead retinal tissue couldn't be saved. They're right. You can't bring back dead cells, but you can absolutely stop the spread and protect what remains. The only people I would say this might not work for are those with end-stage AMD who have massive scarring or complete retinal detachment. At that point, the structural damage is beyond biological repair. But if you still have any remaining vision, if you can still see light and shapes, if you can still read large print, even if it's distorted, then you have living retinal cells, and living cells can heal. Now I want to share something that happened 6 months after I started this protocol, something that convinced me this wasn't just about my personal biology, but about a fundamental truth that applies to anyone willing to try. I was at my eye doctor's office for my regular 6-month checkup. By this point, he knew what I was doing. He knew about the Kale protocol. He was still skeptical, but the scans didn't lie. My macula had continued to improve. My vision was now 20/40, better than it had been in 5 years, even before the wet AMD diagnosis. But here's what happened. In the waiting room, I met a woman named Susan. She was 74. She was there for her injection appointment. I could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear I had felt a year earlier. She was telling the receptionist that this would be her 18th injection, 18 months of needles in her eye. And her vision was still getting worse. I introduced myself. I told her my story. She looked at me like I was selling snake oil. I don't blame her. If someone had told me about Kale when I was sitting in that chair, I probably would have dismissed them too. But I gave her my phone number. I told her, try it for 30 days. If nothing changes, you've lost nothing but the cost of some kale at the grocery store. If something does change, you might save yourself from years of eye shots. She called me 6 weeks later. She was crying. Not sad crying, happy crying. Her eye doctor had just told her that for the first time in 2 years, her AMD hadn't progressed. The fluid under her macula had decreased by 20%. Her vision hadn't improved yet, but it had stabilized. For someone who had been on a steady decline for 24 months, stabilization felt like a miracle. 3 months after that, she called again. She had cancelled her injection appointment. Her eye doctor was furious at first, threatened that she was making a dangerous decision. But when he ran the OCT scan and saw that her macula was continuing to improve without the injections, he went quiet. He didn't apologize. He didn't admit that maybe, just maybe. There was something to this food-based approach, but he also didn't push the eye shots anymore. Ashley is now off eye shots completely. It's been 14 months. Her vision has improved from 20/100 to 20/60. She's reading again. She's gardening again. She told me last week that she feels like she got her life back. And that's when I realized this isn't just about me. This isn't just about Ashley. This is about the hundreds of thousands of people over 60 who are being told that eye shots are their only option, that AMD is irreversible, that the best they can hope for is to slow the decline. And it's not true. It's just not true. You have more control over your eye health than the medical system wants you to believe. Your body has an extraordinary healing capacity if you give it what it needs. And what it needs isn't expensive pharmaceuticals with 20 pages of side effects. What it needs is the exact nutrients that your macula uses every single day to protect itself, repair itself, and function optimally. Before I finish, let me give you the complete protocol one more time. Print this, screenshot this, save this, because this is the information that could save your vision. Step 1. Buy fresh, curly kale, dark green, thick leaves. One bunch will last you about 3 to 4 days if refrigerated properly. Find it at your local grocery store, like Kroger or Whole Foods. Step 2. Every evening, 2 hours before bed, strip the leaves from 1.5 cups worth of kale. Discard the thick stems. Chop the leaves into small pieces. Step 3. Heat 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil in a pan over medium heat. Add the kale. Sauté for 5 to 7 minutes until soft and dark green. Step 4. Crack 1 whole egg into the pan. Scramble it together with the kale. Cook until the egg is fully set. Step 5. Optional but recommended for wet AMD. Add 1/4 cup of fresh or frozen blueberries to your plate. The anthocyanins in blueberries protect retinal blood vessels and reduce the abnormal vessel growth that causes wet macular degeneration. You can usually find them in the frozen section of your local supermarket. Step 6. Eat this meal slowly. Chew thoroughly. Let your digestive system break down the food completely to maximize nutrient absorption. Step 7. Repeat every single day for at least 90 days. Mark it on your calendar. Set a reminder on your phone. Treat it like a prescription, because it is. It's your prescription for healing. Within 2 weeks, you should notice subtle improvements. Less distortion, less dense central blind spots. Within 4 weeks, you might regain some reading ability. Within 8 weeks, your daily activities should become easier. Within 12 weeks, if you go back to your eye doctor for an OCT scan, there's a very good chance they're going to see measurable reduction in drusen, reduction in fluid, improvement in macular thickness. And when they ask you what you did, tell them. Tell them about the kale. Tell them about the research. Tell them that food-based healing is real, it's measurable, and it works. Maybe, just maybe, if enough of us speak up, the standard of care will finally start to change. Now, before you go, I want to address one more thing. The information I just gave you is worth thousands of dollars in prevented medical costs. It's information that could save you from years of painful eye shots, from losing your independence, from going blind. If this video helped you, if you're going to try this protocol, if you believe that information like this should be freely available to everyone who needs it, then I'm asking you to do something. Hit that super thanks button right below this video, not because I need your money, but because every super thanks you give sends a signal to the platform that this content matters, that health information that actually works, that challenges the pharmaceutical narrative, that empowers people to heal themselves, deserves to be seen by more people. Your support helps this video reach the grandmother in Iowa who's facing her first eye shot next week. It helps it reach the retired teacher in Florida who's been on eye shots for 3 years and doesn't know there's an alternative. It helps it reach everyone who's been told that AMD is a one-way street to blindness. You're not just supporting a video, you're supporting a movement toward real, accessible, evidence-based health information that puts power back in your hands. And then, do one more thing. Comment below with your age and your AMD status. Early, intermediate, wet, dry, geographic atrophy, whatever your situation is. Let's build a community here. Let's track who tries this protocol and what results they get. Let's create a living database of real people getting real results with real food. Because that's how we change the system, not by waiting for permission from pharmaceutical companies or medical associations, but by sharing our stories, our data, our healing. I'm 78 years old now. It's been 11 years since that diagnosis. 11 years since I was told I'd need monthly eye shots for life. I never got a single one. My vision is still 20/40. I read every day, I drive every day. I see my great-grandchildren's faces clearly. I'm not blind. I'm not dependent. I'm not a victim of AMD. And if you follow this protocol, you don't have to be either. Your macula can heal, your vision can improve, your independence can be preserved. You just need to give your body what it's been asking for all along. This content is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Do not stop any prescribed treatments without consulting your eye doctor. Always seek professional medical guidance before making changes to your health regimen. Individual results may vary based on AMD severity, overall health status, and adherence to protocol.